You're useless. We're done carrying dead weight. Leave. That's what my mother told me. I was standing barefoot on the kitchen tiles I'd mopped for years, in the same house where I'd cooked meals and cried into the dishwater in silence. My father didn't speak up. He didn't even meet my eyes, just slid a set of house keys across the table. Keys meant for my brother, not for me. They handed him everything. The business my grandfather built, the second home on the lake, their smiles and their public praise, like a metal pin to his chest. And me, I was given silence. No farewell. No explanation. Just a plastic grocery bag with my name scrawled across it, stuffed with mail and cold leftovers. I walked out that night. Didn't shout. Didn't plead. I simply left. For 2 years, I didn't call, didn't show up for birthdays, didn't answer the guilt-heavy voicemails that arrived every few months like clockwork. Instead, I poured my time into something no one expected me to build. Quietly, alone, with the scraps of savings they never bothered to ask if I had, I bought a small patch of land. I worked 2 jobs. Every insult they'd ever thrown at me became brick, blueprint, foundation. I built a future out of all the pieces they decided weren't worth keeping. Then one afternoon my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was unmistakable, my brother's. Panicked, short of breath. He'd just driven past my land, past the stone gate, past the manicured rows of trees, past the new roof glinting with solar panels and the glass-paneled entryway. All I heard was his voice shouting into the phone. Dad, you have to see this. She built a whole life without us. My name is Emery Blake. I'm 36. And if you think you know where this story ends, you don't. Because sometimes the ones you discard don't just rise, they rise loudly. I didn't call back. I didn't rush to explain. I waited, not because I wanted them to come, but because I knew they would. Curiosity always trails cruelty, especially when the person you threw away starts shining somewhere you can't reach. 2 days later, I spotted a familiar car creeping past my fence. My father's. He didn't stop. He only slowed enough to stare. I stood on my porch with a cup of tea in my hand, not smiling, not waving, just existing. In their world, that was already too much. He drove off, and something in me, something I didn't realize was still braced, finally exhaled. That night, my inbox pinged. Subject line, we should talk. It was from my mother. Emery, we didn't mean for things to drift so far. We were only trying to do what was best for everyone. Your brother needed help starting out. You always seemed fine on your own. Let's reconnect. Maybe we can come see the house sometime. No apology. No accountability. Just a new version of history where they weren't the ones who'd push me out. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded the email to myself and changed the subject line to, when they pretend they didn't push you. Then I grabbed my truck keys and drove into town to pick out paint samples. I was planning a mural on the side wall facing the road. A message, not in words, but in color and defiance. Because I wasn't simply living anymore. I was visible. And no amount of revisionist memory could undo what I'd built from nothing. 3 weeks later, they appeared without warning. I was kneeling in the garden, planting lavender, when I heard the slam of a car door. My father stepped out first. Then my mother, her heels wobbling against the gravel as she picked her way up my stone path like a guest at a landmark she never helped construct. They didn't knock. They just stood at the edge of the porch, tourists at a monument. My mother's gaze flicked over the wooden beams, the iron lanterns, the little details she'd never believed I could afford. You did all this yourself? She asked, as though I'd forged the deed in someone else's name. I rose, dirt clinging to my gloves, and let the silence stretch between us like wire. My father finally spoke. You should have told us you were doing so well. I tilted my head. You told me I was a burden. I assumed my silence would be a relief. My mother flinched, not from remorse, but from hearing her own words quoted back. We were under a lot of pressure, she muttered. Your brother was struggling. We didn't think you'd survive. I offered. She didn't reply. I gestured toward the finished mural painted across the side of the house. It showed a small girl planting seeds, while faceless hands hurled stones behind her. Above it, written in gold, were the words, watered by rejection, rooted in self. They stared at it, wordless. I don't need you to like it, I said quietly. I didn't build this for applause. They left without crossing the threshold. No hugs, no tears, no promises. Just two diminishing figures in my rearview mirror and a field of lavender blooming in their place. Days passed, then a week. Silence again, but this time it was warm, not cold. It was mine. And then, without warning, another message came, this time from my brother. A photo of the family business, the one they gave him. Boarded up windows. A crooked for lease sign in the dirt. Beneath it, a single bitter caption. Hope your little garden's worth more than our legacy. Our legacy. The same legacy I was told I wasn't good enough to touch. The one I scrubbed after school, stocked on weekends, poured my effort into for nothing. I looked at the photo at the lavender outside my window and smiled. He inherited everything unpaid. He treated it like a toy, brought in friends who knew nothing, ignored the numbers, shrugged off every warning. He hadn't built it, so he never learned how to carry it. And when the weight broke him, his anger turned toward me, because I hadn't collapsed the way he thought I should. I didn't answer, but I printed his photo and taped it to the back of my front door. Not as spite, but as reminder. Not every gift is a blessing. Not every exclusion is a loss. The very next day, I finally opened the envelope that had been waiting on my desk for months. Inside was the deed to my land, fully mine. No debts, no signatures, but my own. I signed it, stamped it, filed it with the county. The paper didn't just mark ownership of soil. It marked ownership of story, of self. They gave him walls. They gave me air. He drowned inside his inheritance. I learned how to breathe without permission. And the air tasted sweeter than anything money could buy. The story could have ended there, but families like mine never let endings rest. Mom's next message arrived with a glossy photo of her and my brother at a charity gala, draped in evening clothes. Caption, still standing. Family always finds its way. No greeting, no explanation, just another way of saying they still had each other. Still standing. I kept staring at those words because standing isn't growing. And roots ignored too long don't crawl back to the ground that starved them. So I shared something of my own. A picture of the greenhouse I'd just finished, my hands dark with soil. Caption, some of us weren't handed anything. We built what we needed, piece by piece, in silence. The post spread like fire. Hundreds of shares, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I needed this today. You're not just surviving, you're thriving. I hadn't been seeking applause, but for once, I felt recognized on my own terms. That evening, my neighbor stopped by with warm bread. She glanced at the mural on my wall and asked, "What made you paint this?" I hesitated, then said, "Family, and what grows after them." She smiled knowingly, and I think she really did understand because sometimes family lays the foundation, and sometimes they're just the fire that forces you to rebuild. Either way, you grow. Autumn arrived quietly, draping trees in copper and shortening the daylight. Most nights, I sat on the porch, tea in hand, chest steady with peace. That's when the letter came. Not an email, not a text, a real letter, my name written carefully across the envelope. It was from Dad. I drove by again last week. You probably didn't see me. The place looks incredible. You've done more with your land than I ever did with the whole company. I don't know how to speak to you anymore. I don't know how to undo what we did. But I want to tell you I see it now. We were wrong. I hope you're happy. Love, Dad. No bargaining. No hidden request. Just words. Late but close to honest. I didn't cry. I didn't reply. I folded it into the same folder as my property deed. Not a keepsake, evidence. Proof that people can change what they say, even if they never change what they do. That night, under the glow of backyard string lights, I watched shadows flicker across the mural. My land was quiet, but I didn't feel hollow. Because I had learned this, home isn't given. It's claimed, built by hands others doubted, guarded by boundaries no one respected, filled with love that doesn't demand proof. They gave my brother a title. I built something untouchable. Winter came, wrapped in silence. But this silence was mine, chosen. Dad's letter was the last. No follow-ups. No sudden visits. No staged family reconciliations. They said their piece. I heard it. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the table that fed you hunger. Instead, I kept building, expanded the greenhouse, started weekend workshops for local women, women like me, quiet builders, late bloomers, daughters who'd been told their silence was their only value. One afternoon, after class ended, a woman lingered. "I know you don't talk much about your past," she said softly, "but did you build this place because of them?" I smiled, without sadness, without bitterness. Just truth. "No, I built it because of me. They were only the reason I had to start from nothing." She nodded like she understood, maybe more than she wanted to. Later, standing on the back porch, I studied the mural again. I'd added something recently. A second figure next to the girl planting seeds. Not helping her, not offering tools, just watching, allowing her to grow. It stood for something I hadn't realized I'd gained. Witnesses, not saviors. People who saw me as I was, not as what I failed to be. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the ones who sit beside the ash without asking you to deny the fire. Spring breathed back into the fields. Lavender stretched wider, alive with bees and wind. The greenhouse flourished, and so did I. Then came one final delivery, a legal notice. My brother had defaulted on the business loan. They tied the family home to it. Now it was gone. The empire they handed him collapsed. The legacy they thought eternal had turned into debt. For a moment, I wondered if I should feel pity or triumph, but all I felt was distance, like glancing at the end of a film you walked out of long ago. A week later, a local magazine asked to feature my land. The lavender, the workshops, the mural. They titled it, "From Discarded to Rooted." A woman who built backward and bloomed anyway. I didn't share it with them. Didn't need to, because my answer was never in their recognition. My revenge was always this, living well without them. That weekend, a little girl from down the street brought me a drawing. Stick figures in a purple field. One had curly hair and muddy gloves. Beneath, she'd written, "I want to grow up to be like you. The lady who makes things stay alive." I taped it beside the mural, because the real legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you plant, what you guard, and what grows because you refuse to stay buried.